Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS. I am Pratik, your faculty for Daily News Analysis. Now students, in today's session, let's focus on the 5 most important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. The first article that we have chosen is from Indian Express page number 18. Now in this article, we are going to understand about the Indus Water Treaty. Why is it that the Indian government wants to review and modify the Indus Water Treaty that was signed between India and Pakistan is something that we'll understand in this topic. The second article we have taken from Indian Express page number 18. In this article, we are going to understand the feasibility of synchronous elections or simultaneous elections or one nation, one election. So here in this article, we'll understand about one nation, one election. The third article we have taken from Hindu page number 14. Now in this, we'll understand about the Chandrayaan 4 mission and the Venus orbiter mission. The fourth article is taken from Hindu page number 10. Now in this, we'll understand about the extradition treaty signed between India and Bangladesh. The fifth article we have taken from Hindu page number 16. Now in this, we'll understand about the PM AASHA scheme. So these are the 5 articles that we'll be discussing in today's session. Make sure that you hear the videos carefully so that at the end, when we discuss the prelims practice questions and means practice question, you should be in a position to answer all the questions. So if you're in this habit of practicing the prelims questions or practice questions, then I'm pretty sure that in the UPSC examination, you will clear the prelims examination. So students, let's get started. Students, the title of the second topic is Indus Water, India to freeze talks with Pakistan. Now, there were a few articles in the Hindu as well as the Indian Express. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to club all the articles under one heading, that is Indus Water Treaty. So in this article, we'll understand about the Indus Water Treaty. Now, this topic is important from the prelims as well as the means perspective. In prelims, a question might be asked on the tributaries of Indus River, right? And in the means paper, GS paper 2, we have this subtopic bilateral, regional and global groupings, which is part of international relations, right? So, in 2016, a question was asked on Indus Water Treaty. Present an account of the Indus Water Treaty and examine its ecological, economic and political implication in the context of the changing bilateral relations between India and Pakistan. Now, given that India is planning or India has decided to negotiate or renegotiate Indus Water Treaty, there is a chance that UPSC might ask a question on Indus Water Treaty. So context is that India wants to renegotiate the Indus Water Treaty. Why? Because India feels that this treaty, we'll understand what is this treaty, but India wants to renegotiate. Why? Because India feels that the provisions under this Indus Water Treaty, they are not favorable to our country. That's the reason India wants to renegotiate Indus Water Treaty. Now, if we look at the evolution of the Indus Water Treaty, right? Before the partition, the river was used by the people of both the regions, right? However, post-partition, once India and Pakistan got partitioned, Pakistan got worried or Pakistan was concerned. Why? Because the river flows from India to Pakistan. So, India is a upper riparian country and Pakistan is a lower riparian country. Pakistan thought or feared that India might stop the flow of water. And that's the reason an interim agreement was signed in the year 1948, Inter-Dominion Accord, according to which India supplied water to Pakistan at an annual fee. However, both countries realized that there has to be a permanent solution to this concern or issue, which led to the Indus Water Treaty. Now, Indus Water Treaty was signed between both the countries in the year 1960. Very important to note is the fact that World Bank actually negotiated and brokered this agreement between India and Pakistan, which was signed in the year 1960. Now, as per this Indus Water Treaty, right, India will have control over the eastern rivers, full control, like Ravi, Satluj and Beas. So, Ravi, Satluj and Beas, India will have full control. And Pakistan would have full control over the western rivers, that is Indus, Jhelum and Chenab. Right? This point is very, 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 very important. Does that mean that India cannot use the water from the western rivers? No. India is allowed to use the waters of the western rivers, that is these three rivers, for non-consumptive purpose. That is, India can use this water for hydropower generation, navigation and irrigation. India cannot construct or build a dam. Non-consumptive purpose, that is, India can utilize the flow of the water, but India cannot obstruct the flow of the water of the western rivers. Eastern rivers, India can do anything it wants. And in case a dispute arises between both the nations, there are three stages to resolve it. First, there will be a permanent Indus commission. Representatives from both the countries would be a part of this commission, right? Second stage, a neutral expert will be appointed by World Bank, which will handle the technical issues. Third, a court of arbitration, right? Now, if there is a dispute between India and Pakistan over Indus River, then the matter will be settled in this court. The name of the court is Court of Arbitration. These are the three stages through which any dispute, if arises, will be resolved, right? So, all these points, it's important from the prelims perspective, very, very important. Now, so this is the map. If you see this is Indus, Jhelum, Chenab and Indus. These are the western rivers. And then Ravi, Beas, Satluj. These are the eastern. These three rivers, India has full control, and Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, Pakistan has full control, right? So, if you see here, entire Indus Water Treaty is explained. Now, what is the significance of this treaty? It is withstood wars and political tension. Despite the wars fought in the year 1965 and 1971, 1998, this treaty did not get affected, which means this treaty was continued or was followed even during the 65 and 71 wars. Now, this treaty is considered successful. Why? Because it is the only cross-border water sharing treaty in Asia. In the entire Asian continent, this is the only cross-border water sharing treaty, and like for many years since 1960 until present, this treaty is continuing. Representatives of both the countries meet every year, right, to discuss any of the disputes or any of the concerns. So, this treaty is largely considered successful. This treaty also shows that how India is committed to a treaty. Now, please note that Indus Water Treaty is an international treaty. It's not a bilateral treaty. Why international treaty? Because the World Bank has brokered or mediated the Indus Water Treaty. So, it's an international treaty. It shows that how India is committed to an international treaty. India, if it wishes, can easily stop the flow of water. But India did not do it, which shows how India is committed to an international treaty. Now, the question is, why is it now, or why is it that India wants to renegotiate the treaty? If this treaty is considered largely successful, then why is it that India wants to renegotiate? One, water allocation imbalance. Now, the total volume of the Indus River, right, India receives only 20% of water, while Pakistan receives 80%, which means that the eastern rivers, right, Ravi, Satluj, Beas, these three rivers constitute only 20% or 20% volume of the entire water volume of the Indus water, right? Let's say, for example, if the Indus river is 100%, 20% is the eastern rivers, which India has full control, and 80% the western rivers, Pakistan has full control. India feels that this distribution is actually disproportionate. It is favoring Pakistan more than it is favoring India. One. So water allocation imbalance is one reason. Second, climate change and environmental concerns. Now, back in 1960, India did not foresee that climate change would emerge as a big problem, right? Now, the Indus Basin is one of the most stressed water systems globally, right? The treaty did not account for environmental challenges including climate change and global warming. So, this is the second reason, climate change. Third, hydropower development. Now, whenever India constructs hydropower project, Pakistan always opposes it. For example, with respect to Kishan Ganga and the Rattle hydropower project, right? Despite the fact that India constructs or focuses on the hydroelectric power project, right, within its own confines, limits, the Pakistan has a problem with it, right? And if we do not focus on hydroelectric power project, our target to move towards clean energy will be affected. That's the reason we want to renegotiate the treaty. Next is cross-border terrorism. Now, given the fact that Pakistan continuously supports the terrorist groups based out of Pakistan as well as the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, India wants to teach Pakistan a lesson by stopping the flow of water so that Pakistan should be forced to stop supporting the terrorists, right? Then the last is dissatisfaction with the dispute resolution mechanism. Now, India opposes the parallel process. Which is this parallel process? One is a neutral process that we already discussed, and the next is the court of arbitration, right? Which means there are two processes. One is a neutral expert, the other one is court of arbitration. India has raised a question that what if the two mechanism provides contradictory result? That's the reason India argues that the treaty requires a graded dispute resolution mechanism, which means there should be a grade like first step, second step, third step, fourth step. Every step should be exhausted before moving on to the next one, right? So, these are some of the reasons why India wants to renegotiate the treaty. Now, these are some of the hydroelectric projects India has constructed or still is under construction. For example, the Kishan Ganga 2018, Jammu and Kashmir, it's a 330 megawatt project, right? Then Dulhasti 2007, Baglihar 8 and 15, Rattle which is under construction, Pakul under construction, Sawalkot planned, Uri stage 1 1997 completed, stage 2 2014. So you should know the hydroelectric projects that India is constructing or has constructed on the Indus River basin, right? Now, what are the consequences of terminating or abrogating the treaty? What if India abrogates the treaty? Now, if India unilaterally withdraws out of the treaty, then that will lead to tensions between India and Pakistan. The relations between both the countries are already strained. So, if India abrogates this treaty, there is a heightened tension between both nuclear power countries, which means the tension might further grow. Second, impact on regional stability. Now, this Indus River, it also affects China and Afghanistan. So, if this treaty gets violated, there would be a ripple effect, which means, for example, Brahmaputra River, right? Brahmaputra flows from China and then enters India, from India it enters Bangladesh. So, if we abrogate or violate the Indus Water Treaty, China might obstruct the flow of the water of Brahmaputra River coming into India. We all know China and Pakistan are all-weather friends. So, if India troubles Pakistan, China would trouble India by stopping the flow of the Brahmaputra River. Third, damage to India's global reputation. So, if India, as I told you, this is an international treaty. So, if India abrogates or violates the treaty, India's reputations would get harmed. At the same time, it would complicate future water sharing negotiation. For example, we are in discussion with Bangladesh over the Teesta water dispute or Teesta water sharing agreement. So if India abrogates a treaty, the other country might not trust India. Why? Because India in future can any day abrogate the treaty, which means we lose the confidence of our neighboring countries. And then Pakistan actually depends on the western rivers for the agriculture sector. So if we stop the flow of water, that would lead to food security issues and social unrest, which means there will be no food, people will be hungry, people will be homeless, and that or the terrorists would fuel these people against India, or they would instill hate against India in the minds of these people and use these people to create disturbance in the Indian region, right? So these are some of the implications or consequences. So what is the way forward? One, the Indus Water Treaty should be renegotiated, as in both the countries should understand the implication of climate change, which means climate change and environmental concern should be updated in the Indus Water Treaty, and both the countries should work towards managing the climate change or the effects of climate change. One. Second, enhanced data sharing. Now, water data sharing mechanism between India and Pakistan should be enhanced, which means there should be regular sharing of water related information, right? Third, aligning with international water laws. Now, which are these international water laws? 1997 United Nations Water Courses Convention and the 2004 Berlin Rules. Now, these conventions actually meant or are meant for sustainable water use, which means how to use the water sustainably is something that we can learn from these international conventions. So, we have to align Indus Water Treaty with the international conventions or international laws like the Berlin Rules. Next, full utilization of India's watershed. Now, we know that we have full control over the eastern rivers, the Ravi, Satluj and Beas. Now, we have to fully maximize the usage of the eastern rivers. For that, we have to improve our infrastructure like the canal system and run of the river hydroelectric projects. And then most importantly, there has to be high level diplomatic talks between the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Pakistan to negotiate amendments to the treaty. See, any development, any agreement between India and Pakistan would require political support. So it is very important that both the leadership from both the countries should sit across the table, discuss, reinforce trust in each other so that we can arrive at a feasible solution which can take into consideration the concerns of Pakistan, also address India's needs. This is how we proceed with respect to Indus Water. So again, in this article, if you see, we have covered each and every dimension. What is Indus Water Treaty, the provisions of the treaty, the historical connection, background, right? Why does India want to renegotiate, right? Consequences if India unilaterally abrogates a treaty, and what should be the way forward, right? This is how you prepare for any topic so that you can mention or cover as many dimensions in your means answer, right? Students, the title of the first topic is Simultaneous Polls Plan Get Union Cabinet Nod. So in this article, as we discuss in the introduction, we'll understand about the simultaneous election, also known as one nation, one election. And you can map this under GS paper 2, the Indian Constitution and issues and challenges pertaining to the federal structure. Let's go through a PYQ asked in the year 2017. Simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies will limit the amount of time and money spent in electioneering, but it will reduce the government's accountability to the people. So the plus side is it reduces money, it saves money. The other negative side is that it will reduce the government's accountability. Discuss. So once we go through the topic, I am pretty sure that you will be in a position to answer for this question, right? So what is the context? The Union government has approved the proposal for simultaneous election. What is simultaneous elections? which means the election to the Lok Sabha, State Assembly and the local election will be held on the same day. So as of now, there are different dates, different months, different years for Lok Sabha, State Assembly and the local elections. But now, in the simultaneous elections, the elections to the Lok Sabha, State Assembly and local elections which means the panchayats and the municipalities will be held on the same day or in a phased manner. This is known as simultaneous election. I hope you understood what you mean by simultaneous election. Now the union government or cabinet approved why? Based on the recommendation of the Kovind committee, former President Ramnath Kovind. Now this committee actually recommended simultaneous elections in our country. The ruling party BJP has supported simultaneous election, but the opposition political parties are opposing it, right? So we'll understand both the sides, the pros, the benefits of one nation, one election, and the cons, that is the negative side, the disadvantages of one nation, one election. So as I told you, simultaneous elections. Now see, simultaneous election or one nation, one election or synchronous elections means one and the same. And what does it mean? That the Lok Sabha, State Assembly and the local government elections will be held concurrently, same day or in the phased manner. Now this requires restructuring of the electoral cycle. We all know that as of now, elections for Lok Sabha, State Assembly, local elections are held at different periods or different time. But now, to hold these elections concurrently, we need restructuring of the electoral cycle, right? Which means we have to dissolve the duration of the state assemblies so that we can coincide with the Lok Sabha election date or year. And what is the objective? The objective is to reduce governance disruption. Now the governance, it gets affected because of frequent elections, right? For example, we have the Lok Sabha election. Every year we have the election for some or the other state. And because of the elections, the governance gets affected, right? For example, let's say Lok Sabha, we have the BJP government in power. Let's say there's a state election in Haryana, or let's say Madhya Pradesh, or let's say Maharashtra. Then the top political brass of BJP, they are busy in election process, in the campaigning process, and because of which the governance gets affected. There's so much of money spent during elections, right? The policies get hindered. Why? Because of the elections. So once we have simultaneous election, we can have a solution to these problems. Now talking about the historical context. Now see, until 1967, we had simultaneous election, which means elections to the Lok Sabha and the State Assembly were held in the same year. But after 1966, because of the premature dissolution of either the State Assembly or the Lok Sabha, the simultaneous election was not possible post 1967. So there's a break in simultaneous election because of the premature dissolution. However, the Election Commission's 1983 report, it studied the feasibility of simultaneous election, and post 1983, time and again, the expert bodies have been understanding or studying the feasibility of simultaneous election. But now in the recent years, this proposal or idea of one nation, one election has gained momentum, right? It seems that the government might roll out one nation, one election soon, right? But before we implement one nation, one election, we need to understand the benefits, the advantages, as well as disadvantages. Let's understand first the benefits. First is reduced governance disruptions. As I told you, every year there are elections in our country. The Lok Sabha election, the state elections, the local elections, because of which the governance gets affected, right? For example, during elections, the model code of conduct, it gets in effect or it sets in, right? Now, because of the model code of conduct, the government cannot initiate or launch any new scheme, right? And at the same time, as I told you that the important political personalities of every political party, they get busy in the election campaigning. And that is the reason the governance gets affected. Let's say, for example, there's an election in Maharashtra. Now, the Prime Minister Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah, so all these important political personalities, they get busy in the elections, because of which the governance gets affected. And if we have simultaneous election, there will be reduced governance disruption, which means governance would get enhanced. Second, cost efficiency. Now, when it comes to elections, a lot of money is spent, right? For example, in the year 2019 Lok Sabha elections, 60,000 crore was spent for the 2019 elections. In the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, it must be more than this number. We do not have the actual number as of now. Now, when it comes to state, every state on an average, it takes around between 500 crore to 3,000 crore for every state. So, the experts argue that if we have simultaneous election, our country would save close to 30,000 to 40,000 crore every year, which means there will be cost efficiency. This is the second benefit or second advantage that will save considerable amount of money. The third is limiting political corruption. Now, we know that during elections, black money is pumped into the market, right? For example, the money, right? The money raised through, let's say, smuggling. All this black money, right, gets into the system during elections. And if we have simultaneous elections, which means if we reduce the frequency of elections, there is a scope of reducing the political corruption. We all know that during elections, black money is literally pumped into the system, right? So, if you have less elections, which means less political corruption, and we save more money for the welfare schemes. The fourth is enhancing policy continuity. Now, during election, what happens is that the government, they announces populist measures, free bus rides, free electricity, right? These are populist measures that the government has to induce or launch to attract votes. So, if you have less number of elections, which means the government would not resort to such populist measures, right? Which means the policy would be continued and the government would focus more on the long-term benefits rather than short-term benefits, right? The next is voter convenience, which means that there will be only one electoral roll. Now, we have electoral roll for Lok Sabha, for the state assembly, for the local elections. But if you have simultaneous elections, which means there will be only single electoral roll, which means it will add to the convenience of the common people. These are some of the benefits, right? Now, talking about the challenges, the first and most significant challenge is that simultaneous election would violate the constitutional provision. How? For example, Article 83 and Article 172. These two articles have defined the tenure of Lok Sabha and the State Assembly. Article 83 and Article 172, which means there is a 5-year term for Lok Sabha as well as the State Assembly, right? Now, if the simultaneous elections are to be held, right, the duration of the State Assemblies have to be curtailed. Let's say, for example, let's say we decide that from 2029 onwards, we are going to have simultaneous elections. What about the states that get elected in the year or they go to the election in the year 2027? Let's say Uttar Pradesh goes for elections in the year 2027. The constitution promises a 5-year tenure, which means the tenure should be 2032. But we decide that these simultaneous elections will be held in the year 2020, which means the duration of the tenure of the Uttar Pradesh State Assembly has to be curtailed, which means Uttar Pradesh would go for elections again in 2 years. Now, this is actually violating the constitutional provision, right? Second is logistical hurdles. Now, to conduct election, we need thousands and lakhs of EVMs, electoral voting machines. Then we need state police, the security personnel, logistics. Logistics is going to be a very, very important challenge or important problem when we decide to implement simultaneous elections or decide to bring into effect simultaneous elections. Why? Because we need lakhs and thousands of security personnel, EVMs, right? And this is going to be a big challenge before the Election Commission of India. The third is federalism concerns. Very, very important. This is one of the most important points or most important challenges. Now see, during the Lok Sabha elections, national issues are focused, right? And during the state elections, the regional issues are focused. For example, you must have seen that in the 2024 election, right, we have voted the BJP government to power. Or let's say in the year 2019 or 14, we elected the BJP government to power at the center. But in many of the states, we actually voted different political party. Which means based on the national issues and regional issues, we decide which political party should be in power. But now when there will be simultaneous elections, which means that the national issues will overpower or override the regional issues. Which means during the elections, the focus will be more on the national issues and regional issues will be ignored. This is a major challenge that these state governments are facing or seeing, right? Which means here the local, the regional and national issues would get blended. The regional issues might be ignored. This is the third challenge. Fourth, potential for democratic erosion. See, frequent election is not a bad thing. Let's say, for example, 2024, we have voted the BJP government to power. Now, let's say in the year 2026, we have elections in Maharashtra. Let's say we do not like the performance of BJP government, which means now the people are empowered to vote the BJP out of power in Maharashtra state. So, as you're not happy with the functioning of the BJP party at the center, so in the states, you choose a different political party to govern the state of Maharashtra, which means you have an option to punish the government for not performing as per the mandate or as per the expectations of the people. So, frequent election is not a bad thing as such, is what the experts who are against the simultaneous elections are arguing. The fifth, financial and administrative concerns. Now, in the benefits, we have seen that we are going to save a lot of money. But what the critics of these simultaneous elections are arguing is that, yes, these simultaneous elections would save cost. But vibrant elections with regular elections worth the expense. So, the critics are suggesting that it is very important for the democracy to be vibrant, which means people should have a tool through which they can change the government. So, once you vote the political party to power, for 5 years, people would have no choice. So, in order to empower people, frequent elections is a must, is what the critics are saying. And 30 to 40,000 crores for a country as big as India is not a big amount as such, right? So, these are some of the challenges in implementing one nation, one election or simultaneous elections. Now, there are global examples. For example, South Africa. The elections are held simultaneously every 5 years and municipal elections are held every 2 years. Sweden, the elections are held simultaneously along with the municipal election. United Kingdom, again there are regular elections every 5 years. Which means, again in the answer, you can quote the example of these countries where simultaneous elections are held. Now, these are some of the committees that were constituted to study the feasibility of one nation, one election. For example, Election Commission raised the idea of simultaneous elections. Then Law Commission, it highlighted the feasibility of simultaneous election and recommended amendments to Article 83 and 172. Niti Aayog, it proposed a detailed roadmap and phase implementation to synchronize elections to the Lok Sabha and the State Assembly. And the last is the Cohen Committee, very, very important. This committee recommended conducting simultaneous elections. So please remember the name of these committees and try to mention these committees in your mains answer. So students, if you see this topic, actually we are discussing many dimensions, and this is what you're expected to write in a mains answer. You just cannot focus on 1 to 2 dimensions. You have to focus as many dimensions as possible. So rather than writing, let's say 6 to 7 points under one dimension, if you add or mention different dimensions, you'll get more marks, right? Now, what is the way forward? 1, if you are serious about implementing or having this simultaneous elections, then we need to amend the Constitution Article 83 and 172, which we already have discussed. Second, it is very important to have a broad political consensus, which means as of now, the opposition political parties are opposing the simultaneous elections. Now here, the government of the day should actually address the concerns of the opposition political party. See, simultaneous election is not a bad thing as such, but it is important that there has to be political consensus. Why? Because we are living in a democracy. No matter which political party you like or you dislike, you simply cannot take a decision without consensus, right? Third is phase implementation. Now what we can do is, we can start by implementing or bringing into effect simultaneous election by having the elections of Lok Sabha and few states, not all the states, few states at the same time, right? Check the results, check the outcome, and based on that you can further decide if there has to be simultaneous election, which means we can start on a pilot basis, right? Legal contingencies and midterm dissolution. Now let's say, for example, in the year 2029, we have simultaneous elections. What is the guarantee that the government at the center or the government in the states would last until 5 years? What is the guarantee? There can be no confidence motion, right? Prematurely, the assembly might get dissolved, which means the author is trying to suggest that we also need to think about the midterm dissolutions. We need to have a solution in case the government collapses mid-term, right? The fifth is, it is very important to spread the awareness among people about the benefits of simultaneous election, which will help in smoothening the transition and ensuring the public confidence in the entire election process. I hope students you understood each and every dimension of the article, right? So whenever you are writing mains exam, make sure that you are adding all the dimensions, right? Friends, the title of the next topic is Chandrayaan 4 and Venus Orbiter Mission. So in this article, you'll understand the Chandrayaan 4 mission and the Venus Orbiter mission, important for both prelims as well as mains, science and technology. PYQ, a question was asked on the Mangalyaan, right? So again, a question of this nature can be asked in the UPSC examination. So what is the context? The Union Cabinet has approved 2 missions. One, the Chandrayaan 4, and the second one is the Venus Orbiter mission. Now we'll understand about both these missions. The first one, Chandrayaan 4, is very, very important. So you need to know Chandrayaan 1, Chandrayaan 2, 3 and 4. Very important to understand difference between these 4 missions under Chandrayaan mission. Chandrayaan mission 4 is an upcoming Indian lunar is moon mission aimed at being the first Indian mission to return samples from the moon. So the keyword is to bring the samples from the moon. It involves complex mission architecture to collect lunar soil and rock samples and safely return them back to Earth. Second. Third, now this actually is a significant leap in ISRO's, that is Indian Space Research Organization's, lunar exploration capabilities, right? It aims to achieve technological feats similar to those accomplished by US, Russia and China. So this is ISRO's or India's significant leap in lunar's exploration capabilities. Now, this is a difference that you have to understand. Chandrayaan 1, year 2008. The purpose was to map the moon's surface and discovered the water molecules. This is the first Chandrayaan, and the mission was to discover the water molecules, and it was successful one, right? First lunar mission. Second, Chandrayaan 2, which was a partial success. Why? Because the aim was to explore the moon's southern pole, right, with an orbiter, lander and rover. Now, the lander and rover did not make a soft landing. However, the orbiter is orbiting around the moon, which means it was a partial success and partial failure. Why? Because out of these three, orbiter is still performing or continuing to perform, right? Chandrayaan 3 was a successful one. Why? Because for the first time, India made a soft landing on the moon's southern pole. So 1, 2, 3 and 4 is to bring back samples from the moon. So please remember the difference between these 4 Chandrayaan missions, because a question may be asked in the examination. Now, this mission will employ unique dual rocket launch strategy. Very, very important word. A dual rocket launch strategy, which means this Chandrayaan 4 mission will use 2 rockets. This is the keyword to understand. And which are these 2 rockets? One is the Launch Vehicle Mark III. Now, this is one of India's most powerful rocket launchers, right? This heavy lift rocket will carry propulsion module, lander and then ascender module, right? Second is the PSLV, that is Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, which is a versatile and reliable rocket which will transfer module and re-entry module separately to the sub-geosynchronous transfer orbit. So, you need to know that in the Chandrayaan 4 mission, we are going to use 2 rockets, right? Talking about the Venus Orbiter mission, right? Also known by the name Chandrayaan 1. The mission is to study the atmosphere, surface and subsurface of Venus, this planet. And this planet is often referred as the Earth's twin. Why? Because of the similar size and structure to that of Earth. So, this is the objective of the Venus Orbiter mission, Chandrayaan 4 and Venus Orbiter mission. I hope you understood the purpose of Chandrayaan 4 and Venus Orbiter mission, right? Students, the title of the next topic is, can Sheikh Hasina be extradited? Which means, can India send her back to Bangladesh? Extradition. So, under this article, we will understand about the extradition treaty signed between both India and Bangladesh, right? So, important for both prelims as well as mains. Mostly it is important from the prelims perspective, right? Now, a PYQ, critically examine the compulsions which prompted India to play a decisive role in the emergence of Bangladesh. Similar such question on the extradition treaty can be asked in the prelims examination. Now, what is the context? The article discusses the potential extradition of Sheikh Hasina, who is the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, right? Because of the vehement protests in Bangladesh, she was forced to flee Bangladesh and she sought political asylum in our country. Now, Bangladesh wants that India should release Sheikh Hasina and she should be sent back to Bangladesh. The Bangladesh International Crimes Tribunal is requesting her extradition. Why? Because there are many charges filed against Sheikh Hasina related to murder, torture, abduction, crime against humanity and genocide. These are the charges filed against Sheikh Hasina. So, a treaty was signed for the first time between both the nations in the year 13 and revised in the year 2016. The purpose was to facilitate the smoother transfer of fugitives. Now, who are fugitives? The people who actually make a crime or do a crime in the country and flee to other country. These are known as fugitives. Now, for Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina is a fugitive. Similarly, for India, Vijay Mallya is a fugitive, right? Because we feel that and we believe that he has committed a crime in India and living in a foreign country, right? Now, this agreement was created or signed. Why? Because the extremists from the northeastern country used to attack India and used to take safe haven in Bangladesh. So, they used to attack the Indian army personnel and hide in Bangladesh. And the Bangladesh militants also did the same thing. They used to attack in Bangladesh and used to come to India. For example, members of groups like the Jamaat-ul-Mujahideen Bangladesh had found sanctuary in Indian states such as West Bengal and Assam. Now, under this treaty, because of this treaty, India was able to successfully secure the extradition of a prominent leader of this terrorist group. United Liberation Front of AASHA is one of the proscribed terrorist organization under UAPA. And many such fugitives, India was successful in bringing them back to our country. Now, which are the key provisions? This treaty signed between Bangladesh and India in 13, revised in 16, obligates, makes it mandatory for both the countries to hand over individuals who are either charged with or convicted of or wanted of committing an extraditable offence by the courts of the requesting nation. Which means if India believes that a person who is living in Bangladesh has committed a crime in India, then India or Bangladesh would be obliged to send that India's wanted criminal back to India. Now, an extraditable offence according to the treaty is defined as one of that carries a minimum sentence of at least 1 year of imprisonment, right? For an offence to qualify for extradition, how would you understand if the offence is qualified under extradition? It must meet the principle of dual criminality. What is this dual criminality? Which means the crime should be punishable by law in both the countries. For example, murder. Murder is a crime which is punishable in both the countries. This is known as dual criminality. The treaty further allows extradition for those who attempt to commit, help, get involved, incite or act as an accomplice in committing an extraditable offence. So, if anyone is helping other person to commit a crime, even that person has to be extradited. But there are certain exceptions. Which are the exceptions? The treaty permits the refusal of extradition if the offence is deemed political in nature. Let's say, for example, there's one, let's say Congress, for example. The Congress, like the BJP is targeting the Congress or the Rahul Gandhi flees India and goes to Bangladesh. Now, this treaty does not mandate Bangladesh to return Rahul Gandhi back to India. Why? Because this actually offence is political in nature. That's the reason political nature is exempted. However, this exemption is limited as the treaty provides a comprehensive list of serious crimes. And these crimes cannot be classified as political offences. For example, murder, manslaughter, assault, explosions, possession of explosives or weapons with the intent to endanger life using firearms to resist, arrest, property damage with the intent to endanger life, which means, let's say for example, if any of the politician is involved in any of these crimes, then he does not get prevention or he is not prevented under the treaty. So, if there is political pressure, political targeting, in such cases, the political person can seek refuge in the other country and the other country is also not obliged to send that person back to the country. But here, Sheikh Hasina, she is charged of murder, right? And that's the reason under this treaty, India is actually obligated to send her back to Bangladesh. Let's see how the developments will unfold from here, right? Students, the title of the next topic is PM AASHA schemes to continue with additions. So, we'll understand about the PM AASHA scheme, and this is important from the prelims as well as GS3 perspective. PYQ, a question was asked on ENAM, right, which means questions on schemes are asked in the UPSC examination, right. Now, the context is that the Union Cabinet has extended this PM AASHA scheme to stabilize the farmer income and manage commodity price volatility. We'll understand about these terms in the next slide, right? The scheme includes support measures like these things. So, the context is that the Union Cabinet has extended the scheme to stabilize the farmer incomes. Now, which are the provisions of the schemes? Let's understand one by one. All these points are explained in the next slides, right? Now, first of all, what is PM AASHA? PM AASHA is Pradhan Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshan Abhiyan. The purpose is to ensure fair and remunerative prices for farmers' produce. So, the crops that the farmer produces, the government is trying to ensure that the farmers are getting remunerative prices, which means, let's say for example, a farmer has grown one crop and the cost of this crop including everything is 100 rupees. Now, the farmer should at least get 120 or 120 rupees plus. This is remunerative prices, that is, the farmer should get some profit. The purpose behind this scheme is to safeguard the farmer's income. So, if you secure the farmer's income, the agriculture sector is safe and the contribution of agriculture sector would further increase. That's the reason it is very important to support the farmers of our country, right? Now, these are some of the important provisions under the PM AASHA scheme. How the farmer wants to, or how the government wants to support the farmers, we'll understand one by one. First, the government will directly procure, that is buy, pulses, oilseeds and copra from farmers at MSP. So, the farmers or the government will decide, right, like 1 ton of pulses would fetch, let's say 50,000 rupees. This is known as minimum support price, which means for every ton of pulses, a farmer would definitely get 50,000 rupees. If the market is giving him more, the farmer would sell it to the market. But the farmer is assured by the government that if you produce 1 ton of pulses, the government will provide you 50,000. This is how the government is trying to secure the farmer's income. So, for the 24-25 season, the government aims to cover 25% of the national production. How? By procuring fully crops like tur, urad and masoor. Which means here a question can be asked whether the government is providing support for all the crops. No. These are some of the selected crops for which the government is actually supporting the farmers. Very important to remember. Second is Price Stabilization Fund. Now, this fund, which fund? Price Stabilization, helps manage price volatility by maintaining a strategic buffer stock of essential commodities like pulses and onions. For example, let's say because of heavy rains, right, a farmer, or let's say farmers producing onions, the entire field, the entire farm field gets washed out, which means there will be deficit of onions in the market. Why? Because these onions were expected to be sold in the market, but now there are no onions, right? Which means the demand is not being met by supply. There is no supply. There is no supply. Why? Because of the heavy rain, the onion crop got washed out, which means now there is a demand of onion in the market, but because of the washing out of the onion crop, there are no onions in the market. Now, the price of onion increases, right? As price of the onion increases, people would, let's say for example, people buy 5 kg of onion. Now, people would buy only 1 kg of onion, right? So, this price volatility, because of unforeseen situation, here the government, what the government will do is, whenever there are more number of crops, right, more than the demand, the government will buy it and will keep a buffer stock. And when there is a short of supply in the market, the government will use this fund to manage the volatility in the market. This is known as Price Stabilization Fund. It also discourages hoarding and market manipulation. at times what this holders do is they actually buy ample of crops from the farmers. They do not sell in the market. They intentionally make sure that there is deficit of crops in the market. And when the prices go up, they sell their crops, thus making huge profits. This is known as price stabilization fund. Next is price deficit payment scheme. Now, the government compensates farmer for the difference between market price and the MSP. Let's say, for example, the market price is for 1 ton of sugarcane. The market price is, let's say, 10,000, but the MSP is 15,000. Which means now the government will compensate the farmer for the difference between market price and MSP, which means now the government would pay the farmer this difference of 5,000 rupees. This is known as price deficit payment scheme. Then the next is market intervention scheme. Now the MIS, that is market intervention scheme, offers support for perishable horticulture produce, like for example vegetables and fruits, by ensuring that the farmers are earning good amount, right? So it includes a direct payment to farmers for 25% of the production. Let's say, for example, a farmer needs 1 lakh rupees to grow, let's say, 100 kgs of apple, right? Now here the government is supporting the farmer by giving 25,000 rupees, that is 25% of the production cost. This is how the government is helping the farmers to stabilize the income of the farmer so that the contribution of agriculture sector in the overall GDP increases, right? I hope you have understood all the features under the PM AASHA scheme, right? Students, it's time to discuss few prelims and mains related questions. If you have thoroughly listened to all the 5 topics that I have discussed today, then I am pretty sure that you will be in a position to answer majority of the questions. Trust me, students, if you are regular following this exercise by understanding the 5 topics followed by questions, then trust me, no one can stop you from clearing the examination. Believe in the process. Don't just focus on the result. It's very important to focus on the process, because UPSC is not a one-day examination, right? It's not a one-day match. It's a test match. It's a marathon race. So if you understand or study the success stories of famous players, for example, we have Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, Virat Kohli. These people have always focused on the process. They don't focus on the result. They focus on the process. So make sure that you're focusing on the process. And if you focus on the process, no one will stop you from clearing the examination. And trust me, it's very important that honest and hardworking people get selected so that they can serve our country, right? So let's start with the questions. First question, consider the following countries: US, UK, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Australia. With how many of the above countries has India signed extradition treaties? Though I did not cover this point in the explanation, but you need to have a fair amount of idea that India so far has signed 39 treaties, 39 extradition treaties, but India did not sign any extradition treaty with Pakistan. All these countries, US, UK, Bangladesh, Australia, we have signed an extradition treaty. So how many of the above countries has India signed extradition treaties? Only 4. Option C is the correct answer for question number 1. Next, with respect to PM AASHA scheme, it ensures that farmer receive a MSP for the produce throughout the direct government, yes, of not all crops. No. See, what happens is when you're reading the first statement, you read until this point and feel that the statement is correct. So subconsciously, you do not focus or concentrate on the remaining few words. And in hurry, you say that the statement 1 is correct. But the last 2 words, it's making confusion. It's not for all the crops. It's for selected crops like pulses and onions. Incorrect. It compensates farmers for the difference between market price and MSP. Yes. Second, right? Third, Chandrayaan 4 is India's first lunar mission aimed at returning samples from the moon. It is India's first lunar mission to bring samples, right? So it will use a single launch vehicle. No, it will use a dual launch vehicle. This one is incorrect. Chandrayaan 3 was first successful mission to land on the moon's south pole by India. Yes. 1 and 3 option A is the correct answer for question number 3. 4. The Ramnath Kovind committee was appointed by the government for which of the following purposes? Simultaneous election? No. Reforming? Yes. Option B is the correct answer for question number 4. Next question, with reference to the Indus river system, which of the following 4 rivers, 3 of them out of 4, 3 of them pour into one of them, which joins the Indus directly? Now, this actually is a very tricky question. They just played with the words. Among the following, which one is such a river that joins the Indus directly? Which means out of these 4 rivers, 3 rivers, it joins the 4th river. And the 4th river joins the Indus directly. Now, you all know which are the eastern rivers, western rivers. But if the UPSC wants to make your life difficult, UPSC will ask you such question. Alright? Again, let's look at the map. So, which are the 4 options? Chenab, Jhelum, Ravi and Satluj. Chenab, Jhelum, Ravi and Satluj. So, of the 4 rivers, which are the 3 rivers that joins the 4th river, and the 4th river joins the Indus directly. So, if you look at 4 rivers, Jhelum, Chenab and Ravi, these are the 3 rivers that joining Satluj, and Satluj is joining the Indus directly. The correct answer is Satluj. This is how UPSC may ask a tricky question. Now, as Indus Water Treaty is in the news, that's the reason it is expected out of you to remember each and every river of the Indus river basin, right? Now, mains practice question. Simultaneous election to the Lok Sabha and State Assembly will limit the amount of time and money spent, but it will reduce the government's accountability. Now, this was a question asked in the UPSC examination. We discussed in the PYQ. Let's try to answer this question. In the introduction, first highlight what is a simultaneous or one nation, one election. That is, you are synchronizing Lok Sabha, State Assembly and the local elections. This is known as simultaneous election. Now, the Ramnath Kovind, mention about the Ramnath Kovind that recommended these simultaneous elections in our country. Body. In the body, mention how the time and cost, or how the cost would be reduced significantly. So, we would save around 30,000 to 40,000 crore every year, right? Because of which the government can focus more on the governance rather than focusing on short-term goals. The government can focus on long-term goals. However, because of simultaneous election, the accountability of the government towards people would decrease. How? If there are more elections, the government has to focus on delivering services to people, right? If there are less elections, the government not focus on the demands of the people. Are you getting my point? That's the reason the accountability of the government would get reduced. Democratic representation. Because of simultaneous elections, the local issues might get subsumed or ignored because of the national issues. And this might threaten the federal structure of a country and the state's autonomy as well. This is how you have to write the answer in the body. These are the dimensions asked in the question. And here we have addressed what's been asked in the question. Now, conclusion. Now, you have to mention that it is very important that the government of the day has to ensure political consensus, which means there has to be consensus among all the or majority of the political parties. In a democracy, decisions should be taken by consensus by the majority. right? So here the government should address the concerns of the opposition political parties and ensure that the federal structure will not get harmed or the local issues will be focused upon along with the national issues, right? This is how you frame the answer. Right, students, I hope you have understood all the questions that we have discussed, right? Make sure that you are thorough with the topics that we are covering every day. So by the end of, let's say, a year, you are thorough with all the important topics that will be asked in the UPSC examination, right, students? So that's it from our DNA session. Students, we put a lot of efforts to come up with 5 topics for you so that you understand these topics, which will help you to clear the examination. So we request you to please support our initiative by liking, sharing and supporting Narayana IAS. Thank you so much.